Hey, Flintoid here with another Disc Priest Legion video. In this video I'm going to be talking about mana efficiency and how to help maximize your mana for both dungeons and raids. So for dungeons it's pretty simple. Um, Talent-wise, almost every time you're going to want to pick Mindbender. Mindbender's really strong, really consistent, and benefits from haste buffs. So let's say that Lust goes off, or your Power Infusion procs, or you have a Trinket that procs haste, Mindbender's going to gain that effect and give you an extra proc or two of its mana every time it attacks. So for dungeons, Mindbender is really strong. Um, if you have a mage in the raid, or you can get mage cakes, get some mage cakes, eat during like really small break times or while people aren't taking damage and you don't have to move a lot, just drop down. Even if you get like 20% of mana off of one mage cake, it's worth it to do several times throughout the dungeon. If you don't have a mage available, a really cheap replacement food that I've been using is called dried mackerel strips. Super cheap, buy for a couple gold on the auction house each, and you can just do the same thing as you would with mage cakes throughout the dungeon. When you don't have time to drop down and eat, I just spam ancient mana pots as I'm running through the dungeon. These are also pretty cheap. Um, a couple Euceroline seeds, and you'll have a bags full of them. So you just spam these as you run through the dungeon, and then when you get a chance, just spam some mana cakes. Some trinkets uh, that I'd like to discuss. Probably the best trinket for Disc Priest I don't really have. I'm working on it, but the Dark Moon Promises trinket would be number one. It's a crafted trinket that you're going to get from Dark Moon cards. Collect all the cards and then, form them together. And the proc basically does it's something really similar to Demonic Phylactery from Warlords of Draenor, where it would just take a base amount of mana off of your casts. So, for example, it might take 700, reduce the cost of all your spells by 700, and then it'll flip through and it'll change as the fight goes on. So sometimes it will proc really high, and sometimes it'll proc somewhat low. But overall, it's an extremely strong trinket. Another strong trinket is called, oh gosh, I might butcher this, but Amalgams, Seventh Spine. Really strong. You get it off the first boss in Blackrook Hold. And what it does basically is return a base amount of mana back for every Power Word Shield and Shadow Mend that you use. So after 6 seconds, it's just going to refund you for, this one does 3,700, but obviously it's based on your item level. So a decent amount of mana. I mean, Power Word Shield is 22k, so for me that takes, what, roughly a little under 20%, maybe like 18, 15% refund on Power Word Shield, and then Shadow Mend, that'd be about a little over 10%, maybe like a 12% refund, which is really strong. Allows you to spam, a couple extra before you go, and throughout a fight. It really helps. Another trinket that's pretty good. I guess I shouldn't say pretty good. It's probably my least favorite for mana regen, just because we don't have a lot of options on Ellerith, or Ellereth, however you pronounce it, the Cocoon. So it's a really good stat stick because it gives intellect. Actually, all of these give pretty good intellect. But then the mana gain is weak in comparison to the other ones. So every 2 minutes you can proc, by standing still for 10 seconds, you can proc 70. A Mythic Trinket will give you 77,000, 78,000 mana back, which is not a lot. That's not even, what is it, 8% of your mana back? You almost get that passively, I feel like. So this would be pretty niche, probably the weakest of the mana regen trinkets, just because of how long you're static, I mean, and how little mana it gives you. Another option is the Priest class neck. So this neck here, basically what it does, it heals yourself for X amount. It gives you like a small health potion and like a small mana potion. So 155k mana is actually pretty decent for an insta proc. It's a free, yeah, look, it's a free mana pot. So let's say you use an ancient mana potion for 160k. Well, this is like almost the same. Every fight you just get, sometimes twice during the fight, you just get a free ancient mana pot. And then another option you'll get will be a Ley Torrent potion. So Ley Torrent potion will give you a significant amount of mana, but it also, just like the Elorith Trinket, you have to stand static still for 10 seconds, which a trick to these is you don't really want to wait unless you have no choice until you are out of mana completely. You want to try to find a gap in between where if you drink this potion, you're not going to go to full mana, but let's say that at 40% for 10 seconds, you don't have that much to heal. It's not crucial that you're healing. There's going to be a lot of openings like this in a few fights. Even something as fast-paced as Ursoc has these moments where like right after the burst happens and you do your thing, you can drop down and do a Ley Torrent potion really fast before the next charge. So I would highly recommend not using a Ley Torrent potion unless you absolutely have to. Um, before, like, I guess try to use it preemptively is what I'm trying to say. If you use it when you're already out of mana, it's going to force you into trying to force the potion and using it into awkward spots that you really don't want to be using it in. And you might not get the whole proc off. You might get like 7 or 8 seconds. But if you done it like 2 minutes earlier when you were at 50% mana to bring you from like, let's say 50 to 70 something, even though it's not desperate need at that time, you're going to get more value out of it throughout the entire fight because you got those extra few seconds. That's pretty much it. I guess if you're Horde and Blood Elf, I think is the strongest, obviously, for mana regen because you get Arcane Torrent, which gives you 3% of your mana every minute and a half. Let's say this is over like a 7.5 minute fight. You know, this can end up giving you, like 15% of your mana back, which is pretty strong. Let me see, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Yep, so 15% of your mana back, which is pretty strong. I end up binding this sometimes with moves that I use a lot, say like Power Word Shield, or sometimes I'll bind it to Halo, so I don't have to, use a keybind or think about using it. My character just automatically uses it every, minute and a half or close to. Power Infusion, I guess I'd like to talk about a little bit. It's not, it does reduce the cost of spells, but it also increases your haste too by 25%. So if you're just spamming spells with Power Infusion, it's not a huge mana loss for Power Infusion. It's only like, I guess if you want to call it that, an extra like a 5% inefficiency. But like it'll make you burn mana 5% faster, I suppose. But it's not like a big mana saver. You wouldn't use this to save mana. You'd use this as more of like a throughput option, or if you want to stack radiances right before a burst. I think that's about it. I haven't really tested Shield Discipline a lot. Maybe once we have Mythic on farm, I'll try it out to see, just to see how much it would give me. Powered Solace, I've tried out in one instance. I used it on Mythic Il'gynoth, and the only reason I used it on Mythic Il'gynoth was to burst priority targets like Dominators. I didn't I didn't really use it as a mana gain. Like clearly Mindbender is going to be the strongest one out of this tier, especially because Mindbender gives the Atonement healing option also. So that's pretty much it. Um, just look for spots in raids to be able to use your Ley Torrent potion effectively. Use this combination of, Next, Trinkets, um, try to not plea over 5 stacks, so you don't really want to be using plea if you have 5 stacks of atonement or more. Or I'm sorry, at least yeah, 5 stacks of atonement or more. Don't use plea anymore. Switch to radiance or shadow mend. Actually, shadow mend is technically more efficient after like 4. I think 4 or 3 becomes more efficient. Alright, thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. Good luck.